Okay, I'm here. So, welcome everybody. This is Paola, and I'm speaking to you from Buenos Aires, Argentina. And well, this first part of the webinar will be about the structural drivers of gender-specific migration. And I think this is interesting for FIS, for FES, since you are an organization and your partners working not only on migration, but in different aspects of social justice. So I think that in order to understand migration, there are many complex causes at play. And so I think this is a good start to see what are the root causes of migration and of the gender dimension of migration. And also going even more structural to see the relations of capitalism, patriarchy, and migration. What we are seeing as a phenomenon that, well, it's been more visible in the last decades, in the beginning of this 21st century, is the rise of women as migrants, and mostly as autonomous migrants, not only migrating as dependent, as Felix was saying, not as a spouse, but as a worker, as a food provider. And we see that today women represent almost half of international migrants globally. And this slightly changes between regions. We can see in this infograph that in some regions, for example in Europe, they are over 50%. You see that the green is for women, for female migrants, and the red is for male migrants. And so we see that, for example, in Europe and in Latin America, in Europe and in Latin America are the two regions where women are represent more than 50% of migrants. And it's interesting because one migration is south to north, but the other migration is south-south migration. So interregional migration is also very important when we analyze the phenomena and how gender interrelates with migration. But let's see why this so-called feminization of migration. So here I'm gonna do a more structural analysis of the phenomenon, and if we try to understand a systemic approach of this phenomena of what we call feminization of migration, we see that with the neoliberalism, a common trend has been for the countries, especially countries in the South, to undergo structural adjustment programs, which has meant a crisis of the welfare state. But this is a phenomenon that is global as well. Countries in the North are also suffering the crisis of the welfare state. And we are going to go in more depth, but this has meant privatization of public services, and also a crisis of the care system. And we see that there's been an international sexual division of labor where migrant women are at the bottom of the system. And why is this so? Because the global economy is based on a sexualized and racialized workforce, which is underpaid, undervalued, and de-skilled. And it's also been an analysis of several academics. One of them is Saskia Sassen, and she talks about how the reproductive work of women has always sustained the capitalist system. Silvia Federici, also an Italian political theorist, also tells about this phenomena. And first, women were providing their free workforce, doing reproductive work in agriculture. Then in more like manufacture works and the division, the sexual division of labor expanded into what we know as maquilas, or these garment industries in the countries in the South, in South Asia or in Southeast Asia, or well, different parts of the world. But lately, the phenomenon that has added is migrant women migrating autonomously, risking their lives many times, and migrating in very dangerous roads because there are no regular channels open for them. And in order to work in very sexualized and racialized labor niches, which is mostly care work, services, also the entertainment industry, and also other sectors, mostly in the countries of the North. So I think that this is an interesting approach to see what role played migrant women for the global economy. And then we're going to look more in depth about which are the push factors that force women to leave their countries of origin, to look for opportunities in other places, not only in the North, but also, as we saw in the graphic, there's a lot of interregional migration or south-south migration. And which are the pull factors, what is attracting a woman in countries of destination. So some of the push factors that I'm going to analyze are, as I was explaining to you at the beginning, the cuts in social spending and the privatization of public services. But at the same time, the high rates of unemployment in both male and females. So this has forced women into the labor market, but there are no opportunities in the labor market. Also, another highly important and increasingly important reason for movement has been internal displacement due to climate change, conflict, and also the extractive industries that are expelling people from their homes. Sometimes they first migrate to the city, but after migrating to the city, they migrate to maybe a neighboring country and some to the north. So first it starts as an internal phenomenon, but then it becomes an international phenomenon. And I think later, maybe in the questions, we can go more in depth into climate change, because I think it's an interesting phenomena, how it relates to migration and gender migration. And then some specific aspect of gender specific drivers of migration has to do with gender inequalities in countries of origin, less opportunities for girls and women to access to an education, to economic opportunities. Also, gender discrimination, that it's both, I put it in the countries of origin, but it's global. There are different forms of discrimination depending on the culture, but the patriarchy system is global. And also another global phenomena is gender-based violence. And this phenomena usually also forces women to migrate, to escape from the abuser. So one of the strategies to secure livelihoods has been for women to migrate autonomously to secure the household economy and lives. So, and what is the demand? Where do these women go? They would mostly go to work on specific and sexualized labor niches. And one important of these labor niches is care work, because as I was telling you at the beginning of this talk, there's a global care crisis. There's a high demand for care work, and in countries that can pay for this care work, where many women have been out to work in other areas of the system, and where the state has reversed the social rights, and services of care have been mainly privatized. So care is one other merchandise or a commodity, if you would like to look at that like that. And these women these migrant women or migrant women, other sexualized niches like entertainment, the sex industry, also manufacturing and agriculture. So it's not only domestic workers or care work, but this is important because of what I explained as the crisis of the care system. And also finally, with a more economic approach, the issue of remittances, because also women makes half of the remittances in the world, and because they have migrated to take care of their families in the countries of origin, they send the remittances for their children to be educated, to support their parents, their husband that is unemployed. So it becomes an important also input into the countries of origin economies. And finally, remittances are very important sources of GDP growth of countries of origin. So it's not only that they are supporting their families, but they are supporting the growth of their countries. So finally, I would like to make a reflection on how all this situation, as Felix was telling us at the beginning, COVID, this global pandemic, has exacerbated inequalities worldwide. And we see that all these phenomena that I just explained are being worsened. I'm using like the same structure here, but as you see, what COVID has represented is a situation of immobility. So women are not on the move, at least for the moment. We don't know how the future scenario will look like. But now what we see is that the movement of people has frozen. And not only there's been a closure of international borders, but also of internal borders and intra-regional borders. So for the moment, migrating is not an option to escape from these inequalities, both economic inequalities, but also gender inequalities. And for those who were lucky to return to their home countries, not the ones that have been stuck in where they are, There's also been a big stigma when they return to their countries because of the pandemic, because they are carrying the virus, but also the stigma was present before the pandemic. Women returning are seen with a lot of suspicion from communities, from hosting communities. So the issue of return is also very important to take into consideration, and how women are suffering from discrimination and stigma because of that. Also, what we are seeing is a growth of economic depression and the rise of unemployment, and this impossibility to move to look for better opportunities. And also, this phenomenon has also, we've been seeing it all over the world, and it's the increase of domestic and gender-based violence during the lockdowns. And also for migrant women, I put it in the countries of origin, but this is also happening in countries of destination. And because migrant women lack social network, gender-based violence in the countries of destination also is a serious issue. Petra could tell us more about this. She's based in Amsterdam. Well, and also for the countries of origin, the heavy loss of remittances has also to do with the economic depression I was talking about, and also the sustain of the household economies, how families depending on these migrant women are going to survive during the pandemic. In countries of destination, we also see that those women who were not unemployed or in the lockdown are playing an important role as essential workers. And mostly they are the most invisible essential workers because they take care of care work, of cleaning, in the food supply chain, in the health system, but always in these very low paid and precarious jobs. And for all women migrant workers, but most importantly for undocumented migrant women, there has been no access to relief, any kind of relief support, health services, or social protection, or any labor rights. So what we are also seeing is that although the pandemic is a humanitarian crisis, deportations have not stopped, but increased. And also we see a rise of racism and xenophobia in countries of destination. So this is a very quick overview. My colleagues will also add some comments on the current situation, and we can talk longer about this in the question part. So thank you very much.